And hello, good evening, good afternoon, good morning from wherever you're watching from here in the Philippines and from all over the world. And welcome to my podcast, the RJ Ledesma Podcast. Again, thanks so much to all those listening and sending in their comments. I really do appreciate it. In the RJ Ledesma Podcast, I interview the country's pioneering business personalities and entrepreneurs to learn more about how they think about doing business, what are their success secrets, and can we hack them in our own businesses? How have they innovated their businesses during this pandemic? But more importantly, what opportunities do they see emerging in the new normal and in the next normal? Now, is there a business personality or entrepreneur that you would like me to interview here on the podcast? Please do let me know. I would love to have them here in the program and to pick their brains. Just drop me a message. We are live right now on Kumu, CBRC TV, Global Pinas TV, and of course, the Bounce Back Network. If you're enjoying our podcast and you are learning a lot from it, please do me a favor. Subscribe to the podcast and invite more friends to listen to the RJ Ledesma Podcast. And with that, I've got a friend all the way from Singapore. Tonight, we have Amerson Lin, who is the president and co-founder of Gigacover. Now, Gigacover exists to create a fair and financially stable ecosystem for independent workers, or what we call yung mga may hustle, or yung mga side hustle, or yung mga gig workers. At alam ko sa Pilipinas, maraming tao dito ay mga gig workers, people who have got side jobs. And this is exactly the type of people that this fintech startup is trying to address. It also offers financial and insurance services to gig workers, freelancers, and self-employed persons who often lack the benefits of regular employment. Its first customers here in the Philippines were our friends from QuadX's logistics platform, Gogo Xpress, and the freelancing group of my good friend, MK Bertulfo, Filipina Homebased Moms, or FHMoms. Now, what are the growth opportunities does Amerson see happening here in the Philippines in 2022 and beyond? Let's learn more about that one. Please welcome on the show, Amerson Lim, all the way from Singapore. Amerson, welcome to the RJ Ledesma Podcast.
Hey, RJ. Thanks for having me, man. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you over here, Amerson. And you know what? I like I said, I'm not sure if you know, but I run a market called Mercato Central, which is the equivalent of something like Lau Pasat over there. It's a hawker's market over here in the Philippines. And a lot of the people who are employed by the merchants who work for me are really, if technically, these are all gig workers and freelancers. And I'm sure they would benefit a lot from learning more about what Gigacover does. So before everything else, let's just give people a better picture of what Gigacover is. And I often tell people, you know what, I'm sure you had to make a elevator pitch to your investors initially to invest in the Gigacover. Can you share with me if in 30 seconds we were talking to a big investor, what do you tell him? What is Gigacover all about?
Okay, yeah. 30 seconds while you're pushing me here. All right, let's go.
2 minutes, go ahead, no problem. Go ahead.
Let's start with the size of the gig economy, right? I think it's largely underestimated, but the World Bank has done some work on this, and there are about 100 to 150 million workers in this sector. It's known by a few names: the gig economy, freelancers, self-employed, informal economy, right? But there are that many, and easily 40 to 50% of Southeast Asia's workforce. So it's a huge market in terms of users, right? And that's what gets investors excited at the very start. Then we talk about the problems, right? So they're all individuals. No one has reached them. They're underbanked, they're underprotected. Many of them don't have a single insurance policy. And if they want to get credit, it's difficult, right? So Gigacover is here to represent all these workers as a mega group, a mega cooperative, a mega union. And, because we have that group representation, we can get them better access to protection, better underwriting, even better credit, better loans. And that's the big story, right? If this is going to grow, it's going to grow really fast throughout Southeast Asia, the sheer size of the numbers and the sheer pain points. And regardless of what occupation you're in, you could be a driver, a coach, an influencer, makeup artist, there are a variety of things that people do in this economy, but they all face the same problems, right? So that's Gigacover in a nutshell.
From high-end, high-profile jobs to very low-profile jobs. Is that right, Amerson?
Yeah, exactly. That's why I painted the range, because we have very skilled people in this economy. And we also have, a bit more mass, slightly less skilled labor, supporting industries like retail, F&B, ride-hailing, logistics delivery, and so on. Yeah, it's a big range, but they all have the same problems.
Wow. And so I understand it very, very well. I think what people just don't understand right now, especially for the first-timers listening, is how does Gigacover represent all these people? How do you bring them all together and get them benefits? How does that happen?
Yeah, so it starts with how do we reach them, right? Because only by reaching them can we get them into our base and then build that base up such that it is sizable enough to then be a virtuous cycle. So we start by working with platforms and marketplaces and places where these workers would congregate and aggregate, right? So we go to the ride-hailing platforms, so as you mentioned, FHMoms, QuadX. We go to big associations of taxi drivers, associations of food delivery riders, and so on. Even associations of musicians and artists and influencers, right? There are many influencer platforms. If we hit one of them, we get 10, 20, 30,000. So that's how we build our base, RJ. And how do we provide that value? Well, we start with the client, the business that's using them. Well, they want to manage the benefits for these workers because they need the workers or whoever is helping them with their business, what they call business partners, generate revenue, stay loyal to the service, and just do more and be more successful, right? So to incentivize them to do more, to be loyal, you need incentives and benefits. And that's what we provide in the form of financial services. So both insurance products, as well as some credit products. Of course, in terms of sequencing, we started with insurance, but later on, we'll probably bring on more financial services.
Amazing. I hope you don't mind. I mean, I really appreciate where you're coming from and how you're able to aggregate things. There are people, maybe they're a bit savvy, especially knowing how things are scaled and how tech startups work. But let's say I was going to explain exactly what Gigacover does, and I was going to explain to my 78-year-old dad who's not really part of the tech startup economy or does fintech. How would I explain what Gigacover does for them?
Very simple. Imagine that you are now working for somebody and you take the best parts, which is benefits and protection and representation, but you can do away with all the worst parts, right? Because you don't have the freedom and flexibility of having multiple hustles, but yet there is somebody at Gigacover looking after you in terms of your healthcare, your insurance, legal protection, representation, fighting for your rights, and so on. That's how I would explain it. You get the best parts of both worlds.
So basically, if I were to say it, like the other job which I have, let's say for example, is I'm a professional host. I'm a wedding host, events host, right?
Yeah.
So technically, I can continue with that work without being worried about what a regular employee would get in terms of perks and benefits because Gigacover is there. Is that right?
Exactly. I mean, once you made the switch to go from employment to self-employment, you have the concerns, right? Oh, how do I get income? What if I need to invest in an asset like a tool, like a studio, to do the recording work? What if I can't get clients? So all this instability is a result of that choice. But at Gigacover, we feel that this should not be the natural trade-off, right? And we're here to protect that very bottom line, right? Earnings protection, insurance, protection on your assets, getting you better lines of credit, gentler lines of credit. That's helped you smoothen out that cash flow. And then now you have that stability while that freedom as well, right?
Well, so
That's exactly.
you sort of like de-risk what it means to be a freelancer. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. De-risk and stabilize, right? So now you have the freedom as well as the stability, which in the past you might have to trade off, and now you can have both. And I think that's what we know in terms of a mission, like core sort of brand and sort of my personal mission and goal. It's really to make that choice to be self-employed just as valid, right? For the longest time, if you went self-employed, people would ask, oh, because you couldn't find a job, or how are you going to feed your family, right? Those are all very negative, right? I want to turn it into maybe not so positive yet, but at least equal as being employed.
Well, that's really interesting, and I appreciate that one. And I want to get a bit more into your why you got into this particularly, like Simon Sinek's why. But before that one, just tell me what is the current state right now of Gigacover? For those, it looks like a very interesting concept that you're doing right now. What's your current set of investors? How many countries are you in? How many customers do you guys have currently under Gigacover's portfolio?
Yeah, happy to share, RJ. We are in 3 countries right now. We have a presence in Singapore. We first started in 2017, so 4+ years. And we have small businesses in both Indonesia and the Philippines. Philippines is probably the newest, but I think Philippines represents the fastest growing segment that we have amongst the 3. In terms of users, we're pushing about 100,000 at this point.
Across the 3 countries?
Across 3 countries, yeah. Across 3 countries. And we're looking to hit, 200, 300,000 by the end of this year, right? So there's quite significant growth that we're projecting. We've been invested in before, right? So we did a seed round and a pre-series A round, and that's where we're at now. We have investors from Singapore, of course, Hong Kong, and also Indonesia, right? And of course, next we'll be looking for our Series A and hopefully bring on board some major investors from the Philippines.
Wow, very excited for you. I often ask this question for people who get investments. It can be awesome, but at the same time, very scary experience because technically people are investing in what initially for you was just an idea, and now you're sort of saying like, okay, there's no stepping back anymore. I got other people's money helping me grow the business. How did it feel like when the investors started coming in? I mean, they loved your idea, but at the same time, you're going, oh my God, they loved my idea. Now I got to do it.
Yes, it is now a responsibility. But, I also think that they probably had a lot of fear on their side as well, putting their money with me, wondering, if I would be one of those guys that go up in flames. Well, I'm happy to say that we've been very responsible with the cash that they've given us. We've been operating in a fairly prudent way. But it was definitely surprising to me, at least for my investors, how supportive they were. And you don't really see this until there is a crisis. And the most recent crisis, well, everybody knows, was the pandemic. We weren't spared. I think we also were impacted. If the economy ground to a halt, certain sectors of the gig economy were also grinding to a halt.
Exactly.
So we had to get
except for delivery, of course. Except for delivery, that went pretty well.
Delivery went up for sure. Cleaning, security went up, but many others, suffered. But the good thing is, if you're a gig worker, then you can easily just shift. You can easily just shift industries, right? That's your freedom and your flexibility. Yeah, so I mean, great question, RJ. But my investors have been very supportive. So maybe I can just mention Vector. Vector is one of our supporters. Vector Ventures from Hong Kong. So yeah, a shout out to them as well for taking care of us post round. Before that, we had a bunch of angel investors. TK Wong from Singapore has always been a champion of us. He loves to say, in the Star Wars story, you should, if you're the rebellion, you need to act like one. You need to shout your message. You need to get your loyalists. So yeah, in each phase of our growth, we had some investor to really look after where we were headed to make sure that the strategy was sound.
And having said that, there are people here right now. Right now the Philippines is becoming a hotbed for startups. I mean, Indonesia came ahead of us, of course, right now because of the sheer size of the population. Many VC started coming into Indonesia, but right now the Philippines is coming up. Like Kumu, I don't know if you heard of the Kumu, our live streaming platform over here.
Yeah,
it's really booming, and there are others coming up. We have our first another unicorn with the Gcash, which is our our online payment method. Of course, they're all people are now scrambling to probably get investors for their great ideas. I want to ask you some questions when it comes to that. First of all, when do you know that it's a good time to start looking for? I mean, even sometimes when you're doing a startup, you all think your ideas are great, right? Because it's from you. And then if you're an echo chamber, yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, get an investor. You're not too sure, right? So. How do you know that idea is something that's worthy to bring to an investor? And number two, also, how do you know which investors do you look for? I mean, I always hear people saying to us, like, you know what, don't get people who can just give you money. That's not what you want. You want to get investors who've got shared values, who add something to the table. Help us through that process a bit more, Amerson, because you've been through it. Maybe you can help us a bit more understand when is it time to bring an idea to investors, and what type of investors should you look for in a growing company like yours?
Well, I can share my personal learnings from my journey. Well, let's start with when is it a good time to reach out to investors? When do you know that the idea you have is worth something? Like you said. To answer this question, it's very helpful to think as an investor yourself. What would you want to see? And if you do that, it becomes a little easier, right? So you're looking for something that has a huge potential, so a big market. That's what they call it, a total addressable market, something that has a large TAM. And then second, is there something unique you're bringing to the table in that space, right? That could allow you to grow very quickly, take over the incumbents, or create new value. So that's innovation. Right, so market size, innovation, and then the next would be really team, because at this younger stage, you're not backed with a huge ton of cash or existing scale. How you're going to win is largely, do you have the right people, right? So those are the ingredients, I would say. If you spot those three and you say, yeah, I've got a big market, I think my solution is innovative, and we spend some time building up the tech. And look, if it's in this space, I've got somebody who was there before in my team, but I also have a marketing person. I also have, the tech guy. That team is quite well-rounded. It's a very good start. And then the next thing is their traction, right? That is the ground truth. And I think maybe a few startups or entrepreneurs might be prematurely raising and looking for investors' money without having seen that traction. And that traction is really the proof that something you have is working. There could be, a couple of large clients. There could be user growth. There could be more engagement from your first few customers. Only you will know, but trust me, you will know. You will feel it. It feels like it's going the way it should. You feel excited. You feel that it is something you're waking up every morning to do. Yeah, then that's the right time. You want to get money, bring in more staff, spend more on marketing, spend more on customer acquisition, and grow. All right, so that's how I would think of it, right? Don't think of it as, I want to raise a certain amount of money just for the sake of it. I want my valuations to keep going up. I think just focus on your customers and that traction, and the rest will sort of fall into place. And then to extend this discussion, then, what kind of investors do you look for? You're absolutely right. I think you mentioned about money not being just money, but money coming with networks, advice. So I tend to like investors who have been entrepreneurs themselves. I feel like they understand my journey. They understand the risks and what we put ourselves through, right? And they are less like generalization, but they may be less sort of clinical about the whole thing. And then, of course, do they have advantages, or do they bring something to the table for that market or that product or the industry that you're going into? So for me, my next round, I'm really hoping somebody from the Philippines could participate, right? Because I want to open up those doors. I want someone with the kind of weight, gravitas that we can lean on if there's trouble. That's how I think about investors, right? And then the last is just really like, it's like dating. You got to meet up. You got to see if you click. If it works out, it's going to be a good relationship. And I've seen it firsthand. My investors are great. They've helped me through the crisis. They helped me open doors. So pick them wisely, because if you pick them poorly, there's a lot of stress. And they put tough targets on you, and sometimes you sign away certain rights and veto rights that you don't know of. They come in and take over the board or take over the company. Then that's a very bad experience.
Got it. When I look at what you try to do is you try to serve the underserved in the gig economy. I just want to ask, do you think that what you're doing is also something? Oftentimes, when we do startups, oftentimes they tell us, you're solving a problem, or you're trying to disrupt you disrupt an industry. Is there something particularly that Gigacover is disrupting, or is it something that are you doing something that is serving an underserved? Is it an underserved opportunity or unmet opportunity that you guys are trying to address?
It's a second. So it's an underserved opportunity for which we need to spend a bit of time to prove the value, which we have successfully done in Singapore. But once that inflection point is hit, it will quickly take off, and that's what investors are betting on, right? So we're not pulling away business from elsewhere. We're saying, look, this economy is growing, and the incumbents have avoided this economy for various reasons. It's lower income, it's higher risk. I can't reach them in a large way. So, let someone else do it, right? Let's just focus on middle, upper income, and so on. So, we are penetrating or trying to create value in an underserved market, as opposed to disrupting. I think the only thing that we might be disrupting is maybe in the back end, where we're challenging the limits of how quickly claims can be paid out. Are we using traditional methods, or are we using more sophisticated methods of detecting fraud, of approving and rejecting claims automatically, or maybe incorporating the blockchain into some of our payouts, so that they're fuss free and just automatic. That's where maybe we have some disruption. But for the front, it's more about value creation.
I get that. And when you were thinking about it, so you began this business in Singapore because you did see that even in Singapore, there's a need to service the unmet need of the gig economy, because there are a lot of gig workers over there. Do you choose to expand in Indonesia and the Philippines as a result of, it's a natural organic progression because it's geographically favorable to go there, or because you really did see the opportunity? I mean, you could have also gone to other countries where it seems that the opportunity is present. Same, because all economies have gigs. Like, if you're going for size, India's probably got the size, right? That's how. I'm just asking. That's how I would see it. So, choose. Is it geographic desirability?
I think I can put it as a simple two-axis consideration. So the first is the market big enough? Right, so Indonesia, India, US, they're all up there. And then second would be maybe Vietnam, Thailand, Philippines, right? And then the second axis is, can I succeed? And I think that's the other one that is maybe less easy to determine, because success can mean, is it that it's competition? Is it that the local culture, could prevent you from gaining traction? Do you have special, unfair advantages? Do you know somebody there already? Is an investor able to open a certain door or are you chummy with the regulators, right? So the second part, can you succeed, was probably the reason. together with the first, a big market, that led us to Indonesia, right? Because one of our first earliest investors was an Indonesian.
I see. I see.
Yeah, so we felt that we had a little bit of more advantage, and it was also a big market and close enough, right? So that was a good bet. And then second, the Philippines, similarly, fairly big market, maybe not the biggest, but in terms of the gig economy, actually a very, very good market. I was shocked at how engaged the population was in gig work. And maybe because it's not just gig work for the Philippines, but it's gig work
For the world.
and freelance work for the whole world. Yeah.
Yeah.
So many graphic designers are serving on Upwork and Fiverr, and they're doing stuff across the world. It's crazy, right? So if you narrow down your industry a bit more, I would say the Philippines gig economy might be even bigger and more vibrant than Indonesia's.
Wow.
Yeah, and hopefully that proves to be true as we explore it a bit more. And then our ability to succeed, well, a little serendipitous, but we happen to have team members who had done some work there before, new people, and so just based on those relationships, we were able to open up those doors more quickly, right? So just trusted relationships. So that's how we ended up in the Philippines, right? First, a recognition that the market was good, big, it was ripe. Plus with COVID, the desire to have health insurance just went through the roof. So just a lot of natural demand. And then second, having the team that could execute.
In terms of the Philippines, I hope you don't mind. I'd like to ask one more question because this is interesting to me. That you're saying you've got a big gig economy going on over here, which does not just encapsulate serving the local market, but serves the international market. Can you just paint a picture for me? What is the profile of the Philippine gig economy? Because I mean, naturally we can kind of say, it's also the ride hailers, it's also the street vendors. Who did you see initially when you looked at the Philippines? Would you have like a breakdown of who our gig players were?
Yeah, so I think top level numbers, right? Maybe 10 plus million gig freelance workers in the Philippines. Of course, many in the ride hailing, delivery, contract worker space. So your food pandas, Angkas, and so on. But actually, very top of mind was also anyone that was doing sort of graphic design, marketing consulting, SEO work. Just because the English standard of English is high, right? And that allows them to access a much broader sort of client pool. So top of head for me was that actually the Philippines might have a bigger white collar gig worker freelancer market than blue collar, right? Maybe by sort of the revenue or total earnings, but maybe even by numbers. I'm not sure yet. So that's what came to mind, right? Really, it was more of the white collar freelancers that stood up, and then when we started exploring, there were also a lot of blue collar workers, not surprisingly. So that's sort of the picture I had, and of course it would be clearer if I could get to visit Manila soon.
Well, that's what we're hoping for, just as well. And having said that, Amerson, really interesting journey that you've shared with me so far about Gigacover. But what I'm also just as interested in is to discover your own story with regard to getting into entrepreneurship. And we often tell people, entrepreneurship, when you get into it, it's all about turning pain points into business opportunities, or rather irritations that you discovered into an inspiration to doing business. And I understand, I understand you came from the finance sector. So please help me take me through your own journey as to when you were working and discovered there's something here, and when you left the job to put the Gigacover.
Yeah, happy to share. So, and you'll see along the way where was my touch point with being a freelancer. So I started out my career, I guess, on a scholarship program with the government. So the Singapore government had paid for me to study overseas. I went to US. I studied at MIT, and I came back, but I had to work at the Singapore military.
I'm a fellow alumni. I'm a fellow alumnus from MIT.
Oh,
I finished.
That's great.
Finished there too.
Yeah, which years were you there at?
I was there the year of 9/11. So I was there from 2000 to 2001. So nice to see
Oh,
a
so
fellow
I
Beaver. Yeah.
yeah no, I was there when 9/11 hit as well. I
Oh
was there
wow.
from yeah, '01, but that was my very first year. And what a shock in the first year onwards. And yeah, you would have missed it, but '03 was the year the Boston Red Sox broke the curse.
Exactly. That too. But yeah,
Yeah,
very
yeah.
interesting.
So
So I did nice to see that a fellow Beaver over here. So please continue your
yeah,
story.
yeah. Good. So yeah, so I was on the program, and I had to serve up my time in the military. So I was actually in the Air Force. I sat behind on surveillance aircraft, and we were flying sort of routine missions, and that was sort of my uh, path, right? Vocation. They would rotate me in and out. I would go to the HQ headquarters and do some kind of planning, corporate planning or training, and then go back to the squadron and so on. But after 5 years of this, I decided I still miss my time in the US where I was working on products and software. I had an internship at Microsoft for one summer, which opened my eyes to the world of software, and I wanted to go back. So I said, well, I like to try going back to building products and maybe building a business, right? So already the bug was sort of in me to want to build something of my own. So I joined a couple of companies. One was Pivotal. We were building software and consulting for like Twitter, eBay, and so on. So part Singapore, part US. That was for 2 or 3 years, and then I became a freelancer for about 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
So I was consulting, right? I was building software and discussing product with a few clients. And RJ, it was at this point that I tried to apply for a credit card. I already had a couple, and I wanted to apply for another one because of a promotion. So in Singapore, a lot of credit cards come with promotions. You get like a
Mm-hmm.
free luggage or cash back. And to my surprise, because I was self-employed, I needed 18 months at that time. 18 months of self-employment, history,
Mm-hmm.
of which they would take only 60% of the income, right, as eligible income for determining your line of credit or your credit limit. So that was my first encounter with how difficult it was to be a freelancer. Here I was trying to read through my own contracts. I didn't have money to hire a lawyer, dealing with client negotiations, and then I couldn't even get a credit card to have a slightly easier life. So it's not easy, and I felt that for the first time myself. So that was always at the back of my head, And then I went back to the US. I worked for Palantir for a few years. So I was serving the financial services industry at Palantir. We basically help banks find like money laundering, terrorist financing, basically rogue traders or rogue activity. Yeah, so that was my brush with the financial industry, and so much more from a data angle, an operational risk angle. And that took me back to 2016-ish. And that's when I started to explore new ideas. I came back to Singapore and I decided, well, I left the military to try my hand at building stuff. I learned, the ropes for a few years. Why not try something on my own? And then at the back of my head, I was like, oh, I have this experience, right? And now we're seeing that Grab, Gojek, Uber, they're all booming. So the thought of becoming a freelancer was just becoming more and more popular.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, that's got to come with some changes in the industry. And I recall, my difficulties. We validated it again with all sorts of occupations. We have friends who were writers. We have friends who were driving Grab as well. And we said, okay, well, what's the deal? 8 years later, the same problem still exists, right? So it needs to be fixed. So that's how we embarked on the mission. So me and my co-founder, someone I met from secondary school, he had just done also his time in Hong Kong. He was working for Zalora, selling fashion. He came back and, we worked together on the first iteration of this idea.
Wow.
So that was my
Very,
founding story.
very interesting. Tell me, bring me back to this time because this is the most interesting story of how did you get your first client after because you got your beta, right? What did you guys do? You just developed yourself, came to somebody. How do you sell your first product?
Well, we we tested the idea of our first earnings protection insurance. That was our first big product with the first customer, the Grab and Gojek and so on. They were fighting it out. Drivers were getting incentives thrown at them, to drive for one or the other. And we're like, what do you need to further differentiate your platform so that the driver would be attracted to stay, do more rides and so on, apart from cash, right? Because cash is going to be unsustainable. You want some more sustainable alternative. So they were the first sort of MVP, minimum viable product validator, and then it became our first customer. And I think that's sort of the right way to do it. You should always build a product with a customer in mind, as opposed to building it and then trying to look for a customer.
That's right.
So RJ, that's I think we got that, at least that one thing right in our journey.
Amerson, in that journey, I often tell people, when you're an entrepreneur, like myself, I'm an entrepreneur myself. There comes a point when you're doing the business also that you go, oh my God, is this gonna work? Because you go, I mean, as you know, the entrepreneurship journey goes up and down. What is that sort of low point for you? If you don't mind me asking, where you going, I don't think this is going to work out, or where it got really stressful for you, where you thought that was it the right decision to make to put this app together, or to put together Gigacover?
Oh yeah, and it wasn't even that long ago. I think 2020 was that year. I mean, I think many other businesses felt it. So one of the things that a startup does is that it tries to grow at the expense of being profitable. And
Yes,
not many
of course.
entrepreneurs will do this if you're running maybe a more services business, F&B and whatever. You want to make money on your day one. But as a tech startup, I think we're encouraged to grow fast and not focus on the bottom line as much. I'm not saying just completely blow it, but like that's secondary, right? So we had that philosophy of growing fast, acquiring, maybe paying a bit extra to get the next user. That's okay, but it put us in a very vulnerable position. And it's a first time sort of entrepreneur. I didn't know any better, right? And so when the pandemic hit, I realized, look, wow, if you're not running a profitable business at that point in time, and most startups aren't, then you're dependent on investors, and that's like a really bad feeling to have, because you're like basically having to beg for money. Now, in and of itself, that would not be so difficult, as long as the market still felt like it was something we were creating value with, and something that customers really wanted. But 2020, as I mentioned, also saw the transport industry just dry up, right? Because no one was moving around, and a lot of our business at that point in time was serving the ride-hailing companies, taxi companies, and the related sort of driving insurance. And just that all disappeared, in a quarter or two. And we never knew whether it was going to come back, maybe come back really, really slowly, right? And so that was the one that actually shook our confidence a little bit, right? We were wondering, well, was the pre-COVID situation just a false signal, right? Even though we had market validation, was it going to be a long-term sort of trend? So those two things, right? A bit of shaking my confidence, a bit of that having to be in a position of begging money. Yeah, that was a terrible feeling. Right? Me and my co-founder, we both hated it. And the big learning from it is, we're now on track to becoming profitable. I think that takes off a lot of weight on cash. And the good news is also, as the economy recovered, we saw the driving and all that come back. So yeah, I do think it is a long-term trend that will stay, and not sort of a pre-COVID a false signal, right? So confidence-wise, I'm also feeling a lot better. And we're seeing the same across other occupations and other industries.
There's a word that's been worn thin during this pandemic, and that word is pivot. I just want to know that, during that peak, of course, and it goes lockstep together with what was happening to you guys. Of course, things sort of dried up because the gig economy for certain sectors disappeared. Did you have to pivot the business model, or pivot the customers that you were serving to continue? I mean, because you weren't sure when it would come back, right? You weren't sure if Gigacover would recover using the same customer base that you had before. what changes did you guys have to make?
Yeah, absolutely, man. So I think when people say pivot, mostly it's a pretty major move to change your business fairly drastically. Examples would be Slack was a gaming company before they pivoted to a communications app, right? So that kind of really 180 sort of move. We didn't really pivot, but we definitely had to diversify away from transport and into food delivery, into caregiving, security, cleaning, logistics, right? Other industries, and that I wouldn't say it's a pivot, but it's sort of definitely a change in business model. We had to go after different kinds of clients, but the products more or less stayed the same. It was still protection. It was still getting them access to wages and earnings earlier. That was still the same. So just the industry, right?
I see. So it's like changing the scope of the industries which you covered.
Yeah, just going to where the demand was. So the workers and the business, they went to food delivery, logistics, warehousing, cleaning. Yeah, so we just followed them. And just if you're fast enough, I think you'll be able to catch it.
That's right. I want to ask you another question in relation to running Gigacover, and I want to relate it to my own experience. For me, there was a time when I was running my outdoor market, and there were a lot of challenges doing it. But there was a point where I said, oh my God, this is going to work. It's going to be doing good, because I was standing in the middle of the market, and there were like hundreds of people passing me by, and patronizing the market, and people had turned my market, the name of my market, into a verb, like let's mercato, let's go to mercato, or that's how they would say it. So for me, I felt that, wow, it's going to get somewhere. What was that point for you where you said, okay, Gigacover is going to make it, or it's got potential, I think it's going to grow? What is that point for you?
Well, I wouldn't say anybody is using our business name as a verb. If you're a verb, I think you've truly made it, lah. But the turning point of a similar nature was when a friend of mine. So we serve Gojek in Singapore, right? We cover their drivers, and so my friend was taking a Gojek back from the airport. He had just landed, maybe just about 3-4 months ago, and he said he was just casually chatting with the driver, and then they were talking about various things, and then he had just come out of an injury, and then he had a claim, and he said, "Oh yeah, I really like whoever Gigacover is working with, because they managed to pay out my claim really quickly, fuss free." And we're really thankful that I had that $4,000 over to tide over certain things. And then my friend just casually asked, "Oh, so who is this provider?" Then he said, "Well, I think I think like something cover." And then Gigacover. So, yeah, Gigacover, right? So I think that was that point for me, right? Not a verb, but like brand recognition from the very driver that we're serving. Brand recall through a friend. So I didn't plant anybody there. Yeah, that was my point. So that's for Singapore. Now for the Philippines, we're much younger, but I hope to hear a story like that sometime.
Oh, I look forward to hearing a story that for you here in the Philippines. And having said that, coming to the Philippines, I know you're just starting out. You just started the Philippine services. What I find interesting is that you started amidst this pandemic to enter the Philippines, right? I mean, you came in December 2021, if I'm not mistaken. Some people would be more cautious, but to open a business in another country is, I find, very aggressive. Why do it during this time?
Oh, great question, and I think I have a good answer, right? I've always believed that when there is fear, an entrepreneur gets an advantage. If you're more bold and daring and risk taking, you get a better shot. Everything is cheaper. Rent, staff, goods.
Agree.
You agree, right?
Yeah, agree.
But that in
Very
itself was already one thing. And the second thing was, well, we just saw that COVID was actually giving people a real fear of the virus and wanting HMO access and COVID-19 insurance and health insurance in general. So it's no brainer, right? I get better economics on the cost side, and then on the demand side, it's an opportunity. yeah, I think I said that let's go for it, man, and see. So yeah, we incorporated as fast as we could, pumped in some cash and went out. Yeah.
So why at the time, why Philippines? Why not, I guess, Thailand or Vietnam or Malaysia at the same time? And I mean, the experiences are basically the same across the countries with regard to the pandemic.
Yeah, fair point. Now we just we didn't do that analysis of which country would be the best to expand into. So as I mentioned, my team has experience in the Philippines, so it's partly opportunistic.
Understand?
So yeah, hence we just chose that way. Yeah, had that person been in the Thailand, maybe who knows?
No, but that's really how entrepreneurial intuition and opportunistic thinking are like. I mean, that's how you do. You move where the opportunity lies because you've got a network or you've got people that you can rely on to help you start off the business. And I think that's just a great idea. And having said that, I know in each of the markets there's something, let's say, idiosyncratic about them, something a bit different every time. Like there are certain challenges or something that's only specific to the Singapore market that you can handle, and you have to address it in a fairly Singaporean way. In Indonesia, it's a bit different. What made Philippines a bit different? And sort of like, what are the idiosyncrasies of the Philippines, and how are you, I guess, addressing them when it comes to the gig economy over here?
I think if I can compare, what stood out for me about the Philippines was the willingness to pay if the value was, clear enough. And that may not be the case in other markets. Even though the value is there, they still have the mentality of just wanting something cheap or wanting to claim more than they paid. A lot of times in other markets, they're like, oh, I want to buy insurance after I got injured so I can claim, right? They just don't get the concept, right? Whereas I think in Philippines, more people get the concept, and if the value is there, yeah, the willingness to pay, that sort of maturity around that, that's what I've been seeing, and that's what I think is very promising about the market.
Wow, exciting. Now, having said all that, but let's take a look at the market and the market opportunities emerging. You're seeing a bigger picture of things here right now. And I just wanted to ask you, what are the opportunities that you're seeing, particularly business opportunities that you're seeing emerging for Gigacover in the Philippines? And then after that one, what are you seeing also as opportunities emerging for entrepreneurs in the gig economy, aside from the gig itself, right? I mean, is there a way to participate in that whole ecosystem of the gig economy over here that you're seeing as a result of what you guys are doing in Gigacover?
Well, for Gigacover, I think what I can say is, when we've just barely started and scratched the surface. So in terms of growth, it's working with more platforms and marketplaces in the Philippines. Maybe even getting to some of the business process outsourcing kinds of companies. But beyond that, and this is also what I believe, that the future of work, yes, it's largely gig workers and freelancers, but there are many other kinds of employment types within the tech sector. The engineers, marketing, remote work. And they may not be necessarily gig. They could be employed, contract, short term, right? So we're really looking forward to generalizing our model so that within an organization or a business that's participating in the future of work, we can serve whoever it is that you're working with, freelancer, contract, gig worker, permanent, director. We have something for you to de-risk your business, bring value to your workers, your staff, and then move forward, right? So that's sort of the growth we're looking at. And not just that on the worker side, but I think which is what we've been focusing on. But then the business risk itself, how are you running your business and what kind of protection do you need? Let's just say, do you looking for more on-demand insurance? Are you looking for more embedded products, right? So that users and your ecosystem is a bit more protected just because, everything has a little premium or protection attached to it. Right, so that's what Gigacover is looking forward to in 2022. Now, beyond that, we are seeing a lot of opportunity beyond just the protection and financial services. So one big one, of course, is Payments. We don't deal with payments, but I think that if you're working multiple jobs with multiple clients, then how quickly you get paid, how you get paid, escrow and guarantees and chasing for payment, invoice factoring, that whole thing has not been as thoroughly explored. I feel so. There's some opportunity there for whoever wants, to take this forward. And then the second one that just came to mind is upskilling. Right now, if you're in a gig work, if you're a gig worker, what you're basically saying is, look, I want multiple hustles, right? I don't want one thing. I want to be good at a few things and get multiple streams of income. I want to be good at selling online. I want to be good as whatever croupier. I want to be good as a influencer and a freelance. Sort of maybe host, MC, right? So getting them access to flexible learning, maybe affordable, and then just upskilling that population, right? And I think employees would not upskill as much as gig workers and freelancers. I think just the mentality of it is very different. So I think that is actually a big market. Wow. Yeah. So, and I would do that if I wasn't doing Gigacover actually.
And you really covered a lot of what I wanted to ask you over there. I love how you handled both questions of what you would do if you were doing Gigacover, and of course where the related industries where people can grow. Now, as we start to wrap up this conversation we're having on the RJ Ledesma podcast, I know that there have been some valuable lessons you've taken home with you as an entrepreneur. And if you were here giving sort of like your entrepreneurial masterclass, what would be those 3 big entrepreneurial life lessons that you want to share with entrepreneurs, aspiring and current entrepreneurs who are there trying to build their business, whether it is startup related or traditional business related?
Okay, I think maybe the first one is something that I had to grapple with also, and I think that is don't give up. Along the way, and I've sort of learned the value of time and perseverance. People who have stuck with Bitcoin for 10 years, who stuck with being a doctor for 10 years, if you've trained a particular skill for 10 years, that really compounds its returns. And as a startup founder, you hear a lot of stories of, I started a company and sold it within 3 years. That's really on the outlier. I think a lot of more normal businesses and startups, they take longer to develop and grow. So don't be afraid, or don't feel bad if your business is growing a little more slowly at first. Stick with it. If the fundamentals are right, 10 years, I think it's where you will see exponential returns. Anytime within the 10 years. But it's what also sets you apart from people who give up, right? If you stay in the game, then at least you're still there when the smoke clears, right? So don't give up, perseverance and time. So that's one little lesson. Now the second one is something that I also had to learn, maybe a little the hard way, and that is you do need to hire very well, right? Your team is really your sharp end of the stick. We made some mistakes hiring. We made some mistakes trying to be more conservative on hiring. I would say, don't do that. If someone's worth it, don't be afraid to pay. You also have equity. That's something you can use to attract, trade off cash. So hire well. That makes a lot of difference to your team.
Hire well, yes, and I agree very much.
Yeah.
As you say that, I'm also recalling my own experiences, and I can commiserate with you every time. Sometimes the biggest thing for an entrepreneur is going, I can do this myself. I don't have to hire such good people. Maybe we can do that. But sometimes hiring really good people is the best thing to do. It sounds like common sense, but as an entrepreneur, sometimes it doesn't sound too common to you, right?
Yeah, because you're always thinking about your bottom line. You're always thinking about
Exactly.
some costs and stuff. So you worry about it. But no, I mean, if someone's good, they're gonna be more worth whatever you paid, right? So hire well. And actually, that's what a lot of entrepreneurs who have made it also say. They say, every hire that I bring in improves the average. So hire better than the average, and then the average would just keep going up. right? And I think, yeah, if you have the resources to do that, yeah, you should absolutely do that. And then the last one is, I think, stay true to your focus, to your true north. And many times you might get distracted by something shinier. Oh, this industry that's adjacent to yours just suddenly is attracting a ton of cash. Then you want to sort of pivot or get into it as well. Sometimes it's a good idea, right? But just be careful about jumping to something shinier all the time. I think I also see a lot of entrepreneurs who do that. We've made maybe one or two sort of like adjacent moves, but by and large, I think sticking to your core, to your focus, knowing what that is, selling your mission to your team, to your clients, yeah, that's really very important. Your true north. Right. So three lessons that I can think of right now.
Thanks so much, Amerson. I learned a lot from your 3 lessons over here, and it's always good to take stock of what you're doing, your own business, and measure it against other entrepreneurs. We learn a lot, so much from each other, and that's why I love doing this podcast. I learned so much from people like you, and because I have to revisit the own way that I run my business. And having said that, Amerson, if there are gig workers here in the Philippines right now who are interested in subscribing to or patronizing Gigacover services here in the Philippines, who do they approach? Where can they go?
Okay. Well, we have a team physically based in Manila. So Cheska, is sort of the chief of staff who's running the show. So you can reach us, kamusta at gigacover.com. So apparently, I think that means hello.
Yes, that's right.
In Hoodies. Yeah. So, drop us a note or go to our website, gigacover.com/ph. You find a contact number, you can call. Or you can also drop me an email, right? Emerson@gigacover.com. Happy to take any of these queries or inquiries and help you. Yeah. I'm also looking forward to meeting more Filipinos and learning more about what you do as a gig worker, learning about your needs and how we can better serve your community in 2022.
Well, right now we're opening the economy for people to come over here. Right now, we're opening travel. Hopefully, you get to come over here soon, and I hope to have dinner with you in our Mercato Central, and you can enjoy great Filipino street food. Again, we're posting Gigacover's website here on the screen. Can we post it one more time, Clark, please? That's www.gigacover.com/ph. Is that right, Amerson?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, that's fantastic. Again, Amerson, thank you so much for guesting here on the show. Really appreciate your presence and the great entrepreneurial learnings that we gained from you. Looking forward to having Gigacover grow not just here in the Philippines, but across Southeast Asia. Again, this has been the RJ Ledesma Podcast. We will see you next Thursday, this coming Thursday, for our next podcast. Thanks, guys. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for having me, RJ. Take care.